Hi, all, and welcome to the Found Artist Files, the podcast that delves into real stories that inspire, uplift, and remind you that no matter who you are, your story matters. Every journey, no matter how big or how small, is worth celebrating. Here, we'll explore the powerful narratives of everyday people, artists, creators, and dreamers just like you, sharing the struggles, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way. So keep going, keep creating, and remember, you're crafting your own unique path, one story at a time. Let's dive in. Hey, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in on this week's episode. This week we have Evan O'Brien. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Would love to start off just by going in a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do in the industry.
I'm Evan. I work at Neon, and I work primarily in development these days. I started at Neon as the assistant to Tom Quinn, the CEO of the company, and that was, an assistant role, but also kind of a chief of staff kind of role, just liaising with the film teams and the release teams, the marketing, publicity, distribution departments, just making sure that the release is on track, basically. But I've since specialized out of that into development specifically, which is still kind of a new thing at Neon, but it's burgeoning and it's exciting, and um, yeah, it's been great so far.
Awesome, and congratulations on that. Um, so, would love to learn a little bit more about what even initially drew you to this career path.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a similar story for a lot of folks, but I think um, it's basically as long as I can remember, I've just loved making movies. Like my brothers and I have two younger brothers, and one of our favorite things to do is just to pick up a camera, go outside, and shoot stuff. Whether that's, like action fight choreography, rip-offs of like our favorite James Bond movies, or just like, you know, my brother just like picking his nose, whatever it was. And we just fell in love with the craft of filmmaking. I loved not just shooting, but putting it into iMovie. I became an iMovie wizard, and I loved the post production of it all. And it just snowballed from there. I was very lucky to have parents who are very encouraging of creative endeavors. I know it's not like that for everybody. Um, and they nurtured it, and it always felt like this was something I could really pursue if I wanted to, and I did. So here we are.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it's so funny that you said that because it really reminds me of even like my childhood or even what I say about NextFoundArtist. When people are like, oh, how'd you get into it? I was like, there's always two kids who get into film, right? There's the one who's sitting in front of the TV trying to consume as much as they can, or there's the one who's carrying around the camcorder trying to film as much as they can. So
Yeah.
there's one or two that for how people got into the industry most likely. But um, yeah, how would you say like your experiences or challenges like helped you develop this passion?
Um, I mean, I think I've lived a very lucky life. I mean, my parents again were super supportive. I went to a school that nurtured creativity, and I also did like a bunch of theater. I played music. I was just a very creative, artistically inclined person. And also my dad runs an animation studio based in Dallas called Real Effects, and so I grew up going to his office and being around these animators who are, these very kooky people who are just so brilliant.
That's an art
They're
in and of
real,
itself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and they're like Renaissance people because they're not just good at drawing. Like they have stacks of textbooks of physics and biology because you have to know all of these things when you're animating um, at such a high level. And so I just loved being around that, and that I loved being in the sound mixes, the editing bay. Um, so I just grew up around this. I grew up around creative people. I grew up around entrepreneurs, and it's just my world. Um, and I'm very blessed.
Going back to the creative school that you went at or that you went to, which was USC. So, was there one
Yeah.
experience that really provided the most foundational skills for your career?
Um, I don't know about one specific experience. I mean, at film school, there's a lot of advice and internet wisdom you can read about film school, and a lot of it's true, which is that uh, you can learn a lot of this stuff on YouTube, which is, true. But I think the thing that most people agree on about film school, that even some folks who maybe are kind of detractors of it, is that you you build a network with your peers there, just by making stuff with them, and they become your allies. And as you graduate and try to get into the business, which can be very, very difficult, you have a support system that's already built in, as opposed to just like moving to LA, moving to New York or wherever, just by yourself, just like throwing yourself into the deep end. That can be a lot more difficult without that kind of support system. So I would just say that was like at USC, that was the most helpful thing. But I had some great professors. Barnett Kellman, who teaches directing the comedic scene. I don't, I'm not a director, but just learning how a professional director works in the craft of it was really amazing. And he directed so much great sitcom television, Murphy Brown, uh, True Jackson, VP, all these great shows, and he just really opened my mind and made me think about directing in an entirely different way. Um, and Jason Squire also, he has his the movie business book, which is a great book. I highly recommend everybody read it. I tell everyone that all the time. Uh, but he had a movie business class that really also like opened my mind to so many there's so many aspects of this business that you don't think about, like distribution and marketing and the legal and what
Right.
an entertainment lawyer does, um, the waterfall, et cetera. Like these are all more esoteric pieces of knowledge that you don't really see on YouTube. And if you do, a lot of it's wrong. I've learned. But that book is very good. Um, and his class was very good. But yeah, I mean, I could go on. Oh, there, Jody Hildebrand, who she was at Condé Nast. I don't know where she is now, but she was an amazing professor, and she had this class um, that would each semester you would take a different studio movie, and you would just interview all of the heads of department. Um, for each of them. So the director of photography, and all the way down to like the agent of the director. So it's like you just get a crash course in the business through the lens of a single movie, and um, that was also extraordinary. We did Wonder Woman 1984, um,
Nice.
and Patty Jenkins is awesome, as is everybody on that movie. So
Yeah.
that was very cool. But yeah, those were some formative experiences, I would say.
Yeah, and one thing that you touched on that I really love is that people don't also really truly understand like the value of networking, but also the importance of
Hmm.
it from a lateral standpoint, not just a vertical standpoint. And so because
Yeah.
from a lateral standpoint, like you're all learning together, you're all creating together, you're all rising together, you're all helping each other evolve and grow
Yes.
together. So it's very nice to like have that experience and have that support. And also just learning not just the creative story aspect, but also the true business and the industry aspect is super important when
Yes.
thinking about, creating a film. And, so from your experience, have there been any misconceptions in the movie business that surprised you or truths that you found unexpected?
Yeah. That's a great question. I just I haven't watched the studio yet. I need to, but
It
I
is,
saw this
yeah.
clip going around of Seth Rogen talking about um making the show, and he said something a misconception that he realized was wrong, which I resonated with was, you grow up as a lover of movies, hearing all these stories about directors like battling the studios and the studio executives who were just like money grubbing, monsters who just like hate cinema. Um, and that's not true at all. That's Seth Rogen is very correct when he says that's not true. And you know, it makes sense because this business is so hard. It's so uncertain. Like if you're a money grubbing monster, you're not going to work in the movie business. You work in something, more. You go work for like McDonald's or something. I don't know. Like you do something that's more or banking, something that's more sustainable and less risky. Um, but to have a high tolerance for risk like this, you have to really love it. And everyone in this business really does love movies, and they do, and something that Seth again said that was true was these studio executives often uh, come to these inflection points, these like spiritual battles where they have to decide, whether to go with something that they think is best for the art of the film, the voice of the filmmaker, the auteur sensibility, whatever it is, or what would you know work for a broader audience, like what are the test scores, etc. That might dilute quote unquote the artistic integrity of the film, and oftentimes they have to decide the latter, and they have to be the villain, and that sucks. That's not fun. But it's that age old battle of art and commerce. And what I've learned is, um, just for one instance, like the testing process, like testing a film. I haven't been at, I haven't seen this process up close at other companies, but the way we do it at Neon is it's very much just about what's resonating with the audience that we can lean into for marketing purposes. And then B, if the movie's a work in progress, you know, what is the director's intent coming across? It's not messing with the actual intent of the director or trying to tell them to make a movie that they don't want to make. It's just like, well, is the plot clear? Like, is it resonating? Does the audience understand that so and so character made this crucial decision at this time that fulfills their character arc, or whatever it is? Do you know what I mean? So um,
Yeah,
it's just
can
about
I ask?
clarity.
Yeah, and then from like that testing phase, like what are you guys really looking for? What are your some of your indicators for how the audience is really resonating with it, or during the testing phase for marketing? Like, is it an audience reaction? Is it just a feeling? Like, what is really kind of going into you guys being like, okay, this is sort of the storyline that we
Yeah,
should be utilizing for marketing, or that this is a green light.
yeah. I mean, I'm not a marketing exec, so I
Right.
won't speak a ton to that. But I will say that, like, certain characters or certain set pieces or certain moments in the movie, if they get high marks, it's like, okay, that's a trailer moment or something, But as far as like the production process, confusion is a is a score that we pay very close attention to. Just like if the audience is confused, then then they don't know what they're watching, they don't know what the story is, and that's just not a good thing. And we want the director's story that they want to tell to resonate. Um, and so it's like, okay, well, often the director and us, because we're super involved in the post production process, we're just too close to it, and certain plot points that we just like take for granted and we understand because we're so close to it may not be obvious to someone who's never seen it before. So it's just an opportunity to see it from a different perspective. And there are the test scores, but there's also just sitting with an audience, a cold audience who's never seen the movie before, maybe has never even heard of it, doesn't even, maybe it's completely blind, they don't even know what they're getting into. And you're just watching it with them and you can just feel how it plays. Um, and often that, at least in my admittedly short experience, is the most important part. Um, because I think Trent Reznor, who is an amazing composer, said once that, he'll be working on songs and he'll bring someone in to listen to it and he plays it, and as soon as it plays, he knows what he needs to change because he can just feel it. He suddenly, once he's listening to it with another person, he sees it through their eyes, and that's what the testing process is like. It's like, oh, that's not working, or oh, that doesn't make sense.
You like take a step
And
back. Yeah.
yeah,
And
you
you
just
like
see it from a
allow for,
different,
yep, perspective.
yeah, yeah. It's just perspective. And so I've come to really love and appreciate the testing process. And, I can easily see how in other instances it can be weaponized against a filmmaker. And we really don't want to do that. But I just, back to your question about misconceptions, it's just like a lot of these things about the process of studio filmmaking, um, that people seem very allergic to, I've come to really appreciate, um, and learn a lot from. So
Yeah. And so like,
yeah,
talking about the theater experience or just like being around other people who are like feeling that emotion and being able to, and it sort of actually aligned with
yeah,
Sean Baker's speech that he said for
hmm,
the Oscars, where it's
yes,
like coming together and all watching the film together and just feeling
yeah,
that energy allows for people to ultimately unite, right? So it's like we're all seeing something that can also bring us together, that can make us, we're all
hmm,
laughing together, we're all crying together, we're all sharing that moment together. And it's actually such a wonderful and beautiful thing. And I think that,
yeah,
from streaming kind of has taken a little bit of that away, obviously, because you're not together having that experience. But for you when you guys are in that phase where you're like, okay, this is us to be able to move forward. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about the impact of greenlighting a project for society's consumption? Are you like, okay, well, together collectively we all felt that energy of the people who were watching it together, or is it just
hmm,
something about like the story that you're like, no, we as a society really need to see this or really need to consume this? Like, what is sort of that impact of green lighting?
yeah. I mean, it's a big question. I mean, I think there are so many things we take into consideration when we decide to do a movie, and I should say we come on to movies at all different stages.
Right.
We've come onto a movie at the script stage, and also we see it totally finished at a festival and we decide to buy it then. So it's a wide range of scenarios. But I think it's like we try to visualize how it lands in a theatrical marketplace, what the poster looks like, what the trailer looks like, how does it compare to everything else that's out there, and how does it stick out? And that's like a very you know, intellectual exercise that's like studio brain. But part of that is like, well, what is the movie saying? Does it feel like it's saying something urgent, saying something different? Is it portraying something that we haven't seen before? Is it original? Does it have a voice? Is it authored? That's a term we throw around a lot. Um, and those are all the biggest considerations we think of for a neon movie. I mean, we're so big on originality, and but being original, is hard because you're doing some. Often we will consider a film that has no comps. Comparison titles that
Sure.
typically that when you evaluate something, you say, well, what are the comps? What are the movies that this is like that you can point to, and what are their box office grosses, and will it be successful? And oftentimes we'll be like, well, there aren't a lot. because this is very, very unique. And at that point, it becomes like, well, do you believe in it? Do you feel this in your gut? Do you have that forward thinking um, passion that you can just see it working? And that often does not come down to someone at my level. That's something that has to be decided at a much higher level than mine. But a movie like Titan, that is unlike anything. You know, Julia Ducournau. And Tom likes to say all the time that he read the script. We bought it at the script stage, and he read the script and he was like, I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what this is going to look like. But he just believed in Julia so much that he was like, let's do it. And then when he saw it, he was jumping around in the cinema because he was like, I've seen the future. This is the future of cinema. So it's,
Yeah, risk
it's
and
stories
reward.
like that. It's like
Yeah.
very, it's funny, there are all these skill sets that we have and processes that we do to justify our jobs, but then there are these like very romantic stories like that where it's just like we just love cinema, and that keeps the morale going.
Yeah, I mean, I
So
think like that's also the fun of it, right? So it's like in those moments you also are like going back to like why did I get into this, right? Like I love and
exactly, yeah,
going back to the studio, and it's so funny because my team, like we talk about the studio all the time.
yeah,
And
I gotta watch it, yeah,
yeah, absolutely. People who are like in the industry, like I just have seen like everyone who watches it, they're like they laugh because but then they also like crying because like that's so accurate. So
yeah, yeah,
um but it's like when you make those sort of decisions like, off the cuff almost, but it's like it allows you to go back to like this is why I got into film because I believe in this. I love this story. Like I don't know how it's going to turn out, but that's like the whole point about everything that we're doing, right? We believe in the story that we want to tell, or we believe in the storytellers to be able to tell such a great story. And one of the
yeah,
things that you really touched on was like Neon's approach is definitely different from some of the other studios, right? So like how can you or can you just share a little bit more about like Neon's approach specifically to greenlighting a movie from some of the other studios that you've
yeah.
worked at?
I mean, I should say, um, in contrast to this story about Titan, we generally are a very conservative company. Like we build financial models for these movies we're considering. We do consider the comps, and we have a
You're
an
doing your due
output
diligence.
deal. We do our due diligence, and for all the rhetoric about how we're like bleeding hearts for cinema, like it's the business is really hard, and you have to run a really tight ship, and so we do you know all our due diligence. We run the model. We do all of our homework with you know the filmmakers, the producers, all of the people involved, um, and all of that. And it's I have a, a still a limited perspective, I would say. I was at TriStar before this, um, which was quite a different beast. Loved it. Was a great crash course in studio filmmaking and just like how the sausage is made. Um, but sorry, what what was your question again? Sorry, I just got on a
No, okay.
tangent.
Just
Yeah.
for like Neon's approach to greenlighting a film versus some of the other studios that you've worked at, or like does culture come into play, or like what is that? What is sort of
Mhm.
like Neon's approach to greenlighting a film?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, for example, at TriStar, they distribute everything through Sony, which is a global company. And so they have a much narrower target to hit, which is that their movies have to work on a worldwide scale, which is kind of insane. But a movie like Woman King, which is phenomenal, um, is just an example of a movie that that hits that target. And so, um, but at Neon, um, we can we're a domestic distributor, And so when we're considering films just for domestic distribution, we can just kind of think, okay, what works in that market? We do have an international sales team now, so they will come aboard typically for our productions. And so for our homegrown productions, they'll have the worldwide rights to that, and they will sell the rights to different territories. And so when we're considering film as a production, we do have to take these international considerations, which I'm still very new to and learning all about. Like, like, oh, like if there's drug use that totally precludes certain number of territories, or, China doesn't like supernatural things and the films they bring over. Um, so et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these different considerations that I'm still learning about. But yeah, I mean, it's really a case by case, kind of thing, not just on what the territory is, but like what the structure of the deal is. Because another thing you have to consider is bandwidth. Just like, does this company have the bandwidth to take this on? Even if it's like an obviously commercial opportunity, if your slate is full for the year, um, you have to consider that. Um, because there's only 24 hours in a day, and we only have so many. We're like a 60-person company. We're tiny, um, especially in comparison to everyone we're competing with. So these are all considerations.
Yeah, and that's really
Yeah.
interesting, something that you just said about the difference of the distribution from an international standpoint versus domestic
Yeah.
standpoint, because that's one of the things that I don't think that people truly understand is that out of the whole population of the world, the US is only anywhere between 4 to 5% of the world's population. So
Yeah.
if you are creating a film for global consumption, you do have to take in a lot of the other international research and all of that data into the films that you are creating. So it's very
Totally.
different approaches between more of a larger scale sort of an organization versus someone who's a little bit smaller. But obviously, Neon is growing worldwide as well,
Yeah.
which is cool. And so, have you ever seen or like witnessed like strong opposing opinions for script screenlight?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah. We're a very passionate bunch, and we all have different sensibilities, uh, which is always makes it very interesting. And we all bring something different to the table. Um, and it really, which is a huge strength, I think, of the company. You just have different perspectives. But yeah, I mean, it's all it's there are instances like, there are instances where it's like a unanimous, like, this is great, obviously, let's try and figure this out. But other times, it's more of a battle, and that's where, you know I've grown a lot, I think, because I might have an opinion that I'm passionate about, but then I have to go into the arena and defend it. And that makes my case sharper, my thinking sharper, um, and just helps me be a better advocate for the movies I want to bring forth.
I love that, and it's
Yeah.
like truly being into from the start to the end, you're seeing like, okay, I see the vision for this film and for the filmmaker. And so, can you just share a little bit more about like, you going into the room, right? Quote unquote, the room.
Hmm.
What was that like? What did that feel like? Like, does the room like inspire you as a filmmaker or inspire you to be like, okay, well, I love this filmmaker that I may not have known about. And then I'm like, wow, that story is incredible. So, like, just share a little bit more about the feeling in the room and what that was like for you.
Yeah. You mean like with filmmakers, etc.
So like when a script is coming in and you're going into like the arena, quote unquote, and then
The
you're like,
arena.
yeah, and you're like, okay, I'm in the room, I'm seeing which films
See,
that
yeah, yeah,
really, yeah, like which films are like coming
yeah,
to the table that people are super passionate about. Like for you, you're like, this is how movies are made. Like you're
yeah,
seeing like the whole process of it. Like what was that feeling like and that whole experience?
yeah. I mean, a certain, like, one of the first times I was in the room when something was under consideration. What, I was an intern, um, and the movie being discussed, um, it like I just saw that it wasn't this just pure passion play. Like there were just all of these considerations, and certain people on the team maybe weren't in love with the movie, but they saw that it had potential to do business, and maybe it worked with the brand of the company. And so I just realized that, it was largely a very dispassionate evaluation process, which I was like, oh my gosh, yes, this makes sense. This is a business after all. Even though it can be a very romantic business, but it is still at the end of the day a business. And if you if you want to make movies, if you want to be a part of this business, you have to understand that side of it and understand that at the end of the day, a movie has to make money. And you're not gonna get things made unless you see it from that perspective, because you're asking for money, or you're at a studio and you have to put a lot of money into it, and it has to see a return. And it's not just even if you like break even, um, just barely. It's like, okay, you didn't lose money, but then you still had a whole team of people work on this movie for a long time. Um, and so it's not time wasted, or, that's not what I'm saying, but it's just like, it's just a big endeavor. It's a big commitment that
Sure.
you have to take very seriously. Um, but yeah, so that's what I've learned being in the room. And what I would say to younger folks who, are maybe have a chance to be in the room and advocate for their viewpoint. I think it can be easy to hear no, or just be like, yeah, but X, Y, and Z, let's not do it. And think that that's the end. You can't counter that. I've often found that you can really push further than you think you can, and really drive something you believe in, um, through a deeper consideration process. Like you can say, like, okay, I understand your argument, but I don't think you're considering these things. And suddenly that might open someone else's eyes who's like, oh yeah, that is interesting. I haven't thought about it that way. So, just don't be discouraged by hearing, no, I don't get it. That doesn't make sense, once or twice. Um, I think my boss at TriStar told me that his boss told me, my job is to say no. So you have to, like, my job is to make you steelman the case incredibly effectively. Um, because like I said, it's a huge commitment to commit to a film. So, just I don't take no for an answer, basically.
Yeah.
There comes a limit, and you'll really know it when you've reached that point. I have. um, but there's more room for you to advocate than you likely think there is. Um, and I had another thought. I was going for it. It'll come back to me. But yeah,
Yeah, no, and
that's what I
and
would say.
totally love that. And one of the things that I've definitely have said to like emerging artists is that if you're not your biggest fan, and if you're not advocating for yourself, then no one else is going to. And it's also, if you don't ask for what it is that you want, you're also never going to receive that. So it's also, if you get a no in one scenario,
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that you should completely put that away and that it will never get made, or that it's never not, it could just be not the right time or not the right fit. So it's actually a blessing in disguise that someone said no, because then you're opening up the
Yeah,
door for the right thing to come through, or for the right opportunity for it to be created.
yeah, and I now remember the additional thing I was going to say, which was that, it's if you advocate for something, say you advocate for a movie, and everyone's like, "Nah, you're wrong," and then someone else does the movie, and it's a huge success. Like, you can be bitter about it, and you can be like, see, I was right. And, to an extent, that is true. Maybe you were right. But at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to convince people of your viewpoint. If if people around you aren't seeing it, then you're not making the case as good as you could. And that's even if in certain instances, like maybe you are just being totally shut down unjustly, um, that totally happens. But it's not a helpful mindset to have that, that's what's happening to you all the time. Like you just have to adopt responsibility to make people see your perspective, make people see the vision that you're seeing. Um, and no matter what, if your project or whatever it is doesn't get across the finish line, doesn't happen, it's it's on you. Um, and that's a piece of advice I got from an exec at Sony, where I just heard someone say that, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. You just have to you just have to really get after it. And you can say like, oh, this script is really good, someone else should read it, and then no one else reads it because everyone else has a trillion things to do. They have all these balls in the air. And so you just really have to pull someone aside. Maybe that maybe your script is like a horror script, and you pull someone aside who is like a big horror fan. You pitch it to them. You're like, I really think you should take a look at this. Can you read this weekend? Just like push, be specific. Don't just
Have
leave it
intention.
up. Yeah, have intention. Don't just like leave it up to everyone else to shoulder it. You have to shoulder it. Um, and you'll learn a lot through those processes. You'll fall on your face. You'll make an ass of yourself. I've done that plenty of times. I've learned a lot. That's the best way to learn is just get out there and get in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that
Yeah.
because it's like everything that you're doing should be a learning opportunity, right? So it's like whether you're on
Yeah.
set or you're pitching, like every opportunity that you're in, you should be able to learn from it and you should be able to grow from it. So it's okay if things don't go the way that you sort of, wanted to in that situation, but as long as you're
hmm
continuing to learn. And so would love to learn a little bit more about like what have you learned about yourself through your experiences in the industry?
Oh yeah. Good question. I mean, I think this business, these jobs are quite demanding. It's just like a lot of time. It's a lot of weekends. Uh, you know, I have to explain to my friends and family, like, you're not going to see me for a few weeks. It's festival season or whatever it is. And you just you learn how much you really love movies. Like, um, and I of course have had days where I'm like, gosh, is this do I really love this much? And like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to like be reading scripts at 10 p.m. at night, like every night? Like every night? Do I do I have to do that? Um, and I'm still here, so I guess I guess I do. I guess I do want to be doing this. And yeah, you just you just have to really, really love it. That's what I've done. And I'm proud that I've, pushed myself, um and shown myself that I can handle it, I can do it. But it's hard. And they're our generation maybe should change some of these things. Like, a lot of these work habits perhaps don't have to be this way. I don't know. I don't have the answers. But because at the end of the day, it's like if someone else is willing to read that script overnight, make an offer the next morning that expires in 24 hours, then they're just ahead of you. And I don't know what to do. I don't know how to work life balance my way out of that. I don't. So it's hard. But yeah, that's the gist.
Yeah, and loving, all these films and all these stories clearly enough
hmm
to continuously reading them every single night at 10 p.m. Have there been any directors or specific films that you're truly inspired by some of their storytelling that you've been able to like be a part of or that you've witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, uh, gosh, I mean, all the time. I mean, Sh Sean is the most obvious example. I mean, what he's done is so inspiring. And seeing him, like you said earlier, his director's speech, just making it a tribute to theatrical cinema was just so inspiring. And that's it just affirmed everything about my career and what my values have been. Sorry, this is kind of a tangent, but I do want to say, um, a piece of advice I got um, from an executive early on was figure out your bottom line. Like, what do you what even if you're not specifically doing the exact job you want to be doing, like what do you have to be doing to feel like you're on the right track? And for example, what I figured out for myself was I just had to be in working in the theatrical film space. Like I just wanted to make movies for theaters and just be in an industry that values that. That was my bottom line. Um, and so I, and when I was graduating, TV was, all the rage. And it still is, but it's contracted a little bit. But everyone was telling me, "Oh, you got to go work in TV. That's where all the jobs are." You know, the theatrical films, like it's a post-COVID world. Theaters are dying. You should go work in TV. And I was kind of like, "Yeah, but uh, I don't believe you. I think movies in theaters are important still, and I think people will still want to go see them in theaters." And trends will come and go, but your passion stays. And so you have one life, you have one chance to get really good at something, so just like stick to that. Just,
Yeah.
it's worked at least for me. But
It's why we can keep
um
doing what we're doing. It's like you have to be passionate about it and you have to love it. And
yeah.
it's, yeah. And I mean, one thing that we talk about is like, there's just so much joy about watching films with other people, whether that's in a theater or in like,
Yeah.
one thing that we were talking about is how much we miss like drive-in theaters, right? Like, so those were sort of a
Yeah, yeah.
big thing during COVID, was just
Yeah.
getting everyone together to be able to watch it in like outside, whether it was like a pop-up event or just like a drive-in. But there is nothing like that experience of watching them together. And theaters really
Yeah.
do, I absolutely hope that theaters don't go away because I remember going to the theater every single week growing up. Like that was like my favorite thing to do
Yes.
every single weekend. Like I
Yeah.
loved that. We had like a local theater and there was only two movie theaters in the actual theater. It was a super small one, but I was like, but it just like it felt like home. And so you don't
Hmm.
really, if
Yeah.
those go away, what is that? Like what is that for the next generation? Like to have that opportunity, like that's it's to so for people to say, oh, don't make theater or theatrical releases anymore, it's like that's sad to hear because there was so much joy, at least for myself growing up, being able to
Yeah.
go and experience that.
Yeah. I love that. And it's short-sighted too, because what we know now is that movies that have a full theatrical release do better on the streaming
Yeah.
services than
Yep.
just the straight to streaming movies.
Yeah.
So if you want to drive up values for your streaming service, you got to do a full theatrical run. Um,
I
and
want to ask you about that really quickly, though.
sure.
For like from a full theatrical run, what is that for you or for the team at Neon? Like, what does that mean? What is that length? What is that like, sweet spot for it to be a
Yeah.
theatrical full run?
Yeah. I mean, we're obviously a theatrical forward company, and it's the foundation of our business. But I think talking about Tom again, but he pioneered a lot of these different
Yeah.
strategies, these different release strategies of shortening the windows between theatrical and digital distribution, etc. And so you know it's really just at the end of the day, it is about what is best for the film. Um, Sometimes that means a super long protracted theatrical film, and sometimes it means it's a bit shorter. But I think um, as long as there's that foundational theatrical ethos that, filmmakers believe we have and that, we stick to, um, however long the window is, whether it's 17 days, or we typically don't do that, but 17 days or 45 or 90 or whatever, that's, it's if the ethos is there, then everyone will win in the long run.
Yeah. And, speaking from a work-life balance and having the opportunity even outside of work going to see movie in theaters, but outside of that, like
Mhm.
are you doing anything outside of work from like a freelance, from a personal project or collaborations yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, I have this whole cohort of amazing filmmakers that I went to film school with who are all doing different things in the industry. Some of them are also in a similar development, producing track. Others are, on set all the time, doing physical production, and post production, etc. And um, we've made a bunch of shorts together. Um, we still do it. We love it. I will say it's as I've progressed up at Neon, and not just Neon, but it would be at any company I've worked at. It's gotten more and more difficult to carve out that time to pursue those passion projects that are on the side that maybe aren't a side project for you when you think about it long term. Like maybe that's what you really want to be doing. Like if you work, you know even if you have a great, say, marketing job at a studio, but you really want to be a writer, that's like your deepest passion in your soul. Like um it just becomes harder and harder to find that time. And I don't have a good answer about it. I honestly don't. And maybe this is like a cautionary tale. But it's something I've told people who are like aspiring filmmakers, but they're trying to find jobs within the industry. I'm like, that's one route, but also like maybe it's good to have a low overhead where you can focus on your art. And maybe you're like you're slumming it, like you're pretty broke, but at least you don't have executives calling you at ungodly hours about like fires you need to put out, you know? Um, so it's tough. It's a difficult balance, but um, yes, it can be done. Um, but you have to be really intentional about it. If you start work at 8 a.m., you got to get up at 6 to write if you want to be a writer. Like you gotta find the time, and you have to be really, really disciplined about it. You can't just say like, oh, I'll do this whenever I have some time. You won't have the time. You have to carve it out. You have to be very intentional about it, or else the time will just keep going by, and you won't have that personal creative work to show for it. So just
Yeah, I
be
love that.
careful. Is what I would say. Just be careful.
Yeah, of course. And it's always staying true to you and what it is that you are ultimately looking to achieve, right? So it's like you can work for a studio or you can, slum it,
Hmm.
whatever it is, but to still make sure that you're focusing on what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve, right? Whether it's to gain industry knowledge
Yeah.
or whether it's to be working on your writing, always be true to you.
Yeah.
And would love to learn a little bit more. And last question is, can you share a pivotal moment from your childhood that influenced your path?
Oh, uh, I mean, so many. I mean, I think one that just stood out to me was um, South by Southwest, which is a wonderful festival. Um, I don't know if they do this anymore. I hope they do. They had this Texas high school section. It was just for Texas high school filmmakers. But if
That's
you
awesome.
got a short film into that section, you were an official selection at South by Southwest. It wasn't like a separate thing. It was like you got the platinum South by badge. You got all of the benefits of being a South by filmmaker, but you're like a high schooler. And so having a film I made, uh, get to, the screening was cool, but it's like a high school section. It's just like the filmmakers and their parents. But seeing it in a theater is awesome. But just being at the festival and going to all these screenings and meeting all of these filmmakers and being in this community and being in a scene and feeling like you're part of this thriving ecosystem, um, was was just really beautiful, and it was definitely a pivotal moment for me, I think, as a young filmmaker, just being like, oh, this is like a whole world, um, that I can I can become a part of in some major way, and I can have a major impact in it because I'm here. Like that's self-evident enough that like I can do this, you know. So
I love that. And
yeah,
and I love also like for people who are listening, like the importance of film festivals and that there's over 2,300 film festivals in the world. Like
yes,
going to them and just experiencing them, and it's like no
absolutely,
matter, yeah, no matter what community that you enjoy or that you want to be able to, consume, there is something for everyone. So to still go to that and like be able to, you know enjoy art again, but also enjoy art that you want to consume. And just to have that experience and just meet artists is just such a wonderful experience. So like, I love that you were able to do that in high school, and it still doesn't matter if it was a high school section or not. That's an amazing
yeah.
accomplishment. So I mean, that's awesome. I'm glad that you were able to experience that.
Yeah, no, it was, and I would also say, I mentioned South by, which is like a major, major
Yeah,
festival, but like you said, there are so many festivals out there, that are doing really the Lord's work. They're, there are these just extraordinarily passionate people who put so much time into these festivals, that are so worth going to that, maybe don't get get headlines and deadline or anything, but are, I would even argue, more important than some of these bigger festivals because the
agreed.
it, there's just no barriers. There's no like, the access is all there, and some of these festivals program, I think, better stuff than the big ones, and so you can really open your eyes to so many things that's out there, so many perspectives, so many voices, um, and so many filmmakers from around the world, um, and connect with those people. And that is, yeah, just such a beautiful thing. So, um, don't discount your small local festival. Go to it. Definitely go.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's amazing advice, and I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for being you, and to everyone listening, always be you. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Did you enjoy this week's journey? So do we. And don't forget to give us a follow on all of our other socials at NextFoundArtist. Also, head on over to our website, nextfoundartist.com, to find and watch independent films from your next favorite artist.